Welcome to English Story Hub. Learn English through fun stories. Improve vocabulary, listening, and speaking skills. Like, subscribe, and keep learning with us.
The Song Between Us. Part 1. Friday nights at Marlowe's cafe always smelled of cinnamon steam and rosin-dusted wood. The place was narrow, brick on one side, a quilt of framed local art on the other, strings of umber bulbs sagging in lazy arcs overhead. By 8 p.m., the regulars had already learned to angle their chairs toward the low platform in front of the windows, where a single mic stand and a battered stool meant the night's music was about to begin. At 8:07, because he claimed 7 was a luckier number than 0, Ethan Harlow tuned the cedar-topped guitar that had been his companion since college. He checked the tuning fork tucked in the case lid, plucked open D, adjusted, and grinned at the subtle hush that rolled through the room. People lowered conversations the way one dims lights. The hum of the espresso machine faded beneath expectation. He loved that tiny pause before sound. Loved it more than applause, more than streaming counts or brief viral bursts. The pause said, "We trust you. Show us who we are tonight." He scanned the cafe, greeting familiar faces with chin lifts and quick flashes of teeth. Front table, Mr. Ajay with his endless crossword. Window bench, two college kids pretending this was their first date. Midroom, Nishate barista, who always clocked out early on Fridays to claim a seat and heckle him with sugar packets. And in the back, tucked into the deep shadow under a beam, sat the listener who never came close. Claire. He'd learned her name accidentally. One rainy week in April she'd ordered tea to go, and Nisha had called it out. Chamomile with honey for Claire. She'd lifted a hand without leaving her corner. After that, Ethan wrote the name down in the notes of his phone. Claire back corner listens. He wrote it the way he wrote unused lyric fragments, because sometimes a name was the start of a song. Claire arrived early enough to choose any chair but always picked the one farthest from the stage. She did not face him directly, she angled herself half sideways, as if prepared to disappear. Yet she never missed a set. Through storms, through crowds, through the swelter of pre-monsoon heat when the AC faltered, she came. She listened with a focus that could cut glass. He wondered who she was listening for. Claire Winters told herself she wasn't hiding. She simply liked walls at her back. She liked exits in sight. She liked to hear music as if it had traveled to find her, as if by the time the melody reached the back beam it had shed the friction of other listeners and landed raw. Up close, crowds breathed on you. They nudged, laughed too loud, clapped offbeat. In the back, the music bloomed. Unbroken. At least that's what she told herself. The first time she ducked into Marlowe's, she'd been soaked, sketchbook wrapped in her sweater, hands shaking from an outdoor art fair that had ended badly. A sudden gust had toppled one of her hanging watercolor panels. The metal rack crashed. A child cried. Someone shouted about safety. Claire's heart detonated in her ribs and she shut down, the way she had since college when bodies pressed too close. She'd fled with rain streaking her paintings. She needed somewhere small, warm, forgiving. She found cinnamon air and the sound of a guitar. Ethan had been halfway through an instrumental, fingers dancing a folk run that braided into something she later learned was an improvised bridge. She stood dripping near the door, transfixed, until Nisha tugged her toward the back and shoved a towel in her hand. "Sit. Listen. We'll save the art." Claire listened. She came back. Week after week she returned to that corner, her corner, sketching the curve of Ethan's wrist, the slope of his concentration, the audience glowing in reflected filament bulbs. She promised herself she would thank him someday for holding space without demanding anything in return. Someday kept slipping. Spring leaned toward summer. The cafe installed a rickety ceiling fan that clacked through ballads. Ethan cycled new songs into his setlist, originals threaded between familiar covers that kept the tip jar alive. A friend recorded one of his Friday nights and posted a clip, Ethan coaxing a crowd chorus on an old Leonard Cohen tune, then dissolving into a laughing misrhyme when Ajay mangled a line. The clip ping-ponged around local feeds. Crowds swelled. Claire retreated deeper into her corner, knees tucked under the chair, sketchbook held like a shield. He noticed. He noticed other things. She always ordered chamomile with honey, then let it go cold. She sketched fast, head down, when he talked between songs. When he played in minor keys, she stilled. When he hit bright, finger-picked runs, she breathed. He began arranging sets with her pulse in mind, though. He pretended it was random. One Friday, near the end of his second set, he lost her. The corner was empty. Her chair sat askew, a napkin on the table. He felt it like a wrong chord. He closed the song early, mumbled thanks, and slid offstage as Nisha wove through the crowd. "Looking for your shadow?" she asked, handing him a fresh cup. Where would she go? Bathroom, I think. Panic spike. "You pushed them too loud tonight, rockstar." He winced. The new trio of college guys had shouted requests until he gave in and cranked the amp. Too much. Too close. Claire reappeared minutes later. Cheeks damp, eyes red but steady. She reclaimed her seat. Ethan exhaled. When he began again, he turned the amp down and played Unmikti, the room leaning close to catch each note. That night, tips doubled. The moment arrived on a monsoon-heavy evening in June, air syrupy, thunder pacing the distance like a restless dog. Marlowe's was packed shoulder to shoulder, students hiding from rain, couples sharing deserts, strangers trapped by flooded sidewalks and resigned to waiting it out with music. Ethan's shirt clung to his spine beneath the stage lights. His fingers were slick. He wiped them on his jeans between songs. He was 2 verses into an original when lightning cracked so near the bulbs flickered. Half the room gasped. Half laughed. Ethan wrote the chord, bending it to mimic thunder. The crowd cheered. In the back, Claire flinched. He saw her lift a hand to her throat, saw the shallow, rapid rise of her breath, saw the weather. Crowd swelled around her corner like a tide threatening to cut her off from the exit. Something in him snapped, a protective string, a reckless impulse, a musician's instinct to tune the room. He cut the song mid-measure. Silence slapped. Heads jerked up. Nisha froze with a tray of mugs. Ethan leaned toward the mic, gaze pinned to the back beam. "You," he said, smiling as if he'd rehearsed this since birth. Back corner. "You've listened to me for months and I don't even know if you like the music or you're waiting for me to mess up. Why do you always sit so far away?" The room pivoted to follow his line of sight. 100 faces turned. Claire's chair might as well have been under a stage light. Heat flooded her. "Run," her nerves ordered. "Melt into brick. Vanish." But she saw something open in Ethan's expression, not mockery, not pressure, just curiosity threaded with care. She rose halfway, knuckles white on the chair back, and forced sound through a throat made of splinters. "Because," she whispered, and the whole room held its breath. "If I sit closer, I might fall in love." Laughter rippled, soft, surprised, the kind that warms rather than scorches. Ethan's grin unfolded slow and startled, like a song finding its chorus. He strummed a single, shimmering chord that rang through the hush. "Then come closer," he said. "This song is for you." Someone whooped. Nisha pumped a fist. Ajay wiped his eyes as if this were theatre worth paying double for. Claire's legs moved before her head agreed. She threaded through the maze of chairs, past knees and bags and damp umbrellas, until she stood 3 feet from the stage. Ethan changed keys. He began to play. Later, people asked if he'd prepared that song. He hadn't, not fully. The progression existed as scraps on his voice memo app, a late-night exploration he'd tagged Junren_Claire idea and forgotten to finish. On stage, with the cafe's humidity buzzing in his amp and the taste of adrenaline in his teeth, he stitched fragments into something whole. He sang about distant lanterns. He sang about listening from shadows and the way sound travels farther in rain. He wove in offhand details only a regular would catch. Ajay's crosswords, Nisha's sugar art in foam, the bent ceiling fan blade that clicked in 5/4 time. Then he sang directly to the woman standing near enough that he could see the trembling at her wrist. "I've been tuning my nights to your quiet, chasing your outline in umber light. If distance is safety, I'll play from the rafters. But darling, I hope you come closer tonight." It wasn't polished. Lines repeated wrong. He dropped a lyric and replaced it with a laugh. But when the final chord drifted, the cafe erupted. Not bar noise loud, heart loud. The kind that thuds in the floorboards. Claire cried openly. She didn't bolt. She let the sound pour over her, and when it settled she did something braver than speaking from the back beam. She extended her hand. Ethan leaned down and shook it. After close, when chairs were stacked and the floor mopped and rain still hammered the street, Claire lingered beneath the awning with her sketchbook pressed to her chest. Ethan packed slow, giving her time to leave if she wanted privacy, but she didn't move. Finally he slung the guitar case over his back and joined her in the doorway. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Her smile was exhausted and luminous. "I'm Ethan." "Claire." You know that." "I do." He chuckled. "Thank you for saving me from playing to avoid back there." "I wasn't saving you. I was hiding." You interrupted. "Rude of me." "Effective." She opened the sketchbook a fraction, enough for him to glimpse graphite swirls. The curve of his shoulder under stage light, the shape of the crowd as a field of soft ovals, the way the mic stand leaned. He caught his own hands, detailed down to the half-moon scar on his thumb. "You draw me." "I draw everything I'm afraid to touch." He inhaled. The rain eased. Traffic hissed by in sheets. "So," he said, trying for light, "you fell in love yet?" She blinked, startled laughter catching in her throat. "I didn't say with whom." "Fair." He nudged the door with his boot. "Walk you to wherever not crowded is." She hesitated. It was late. She barely knew him. Her rules about boundaries screamed caution, but she nodded. They stepped into the wet street and set off beneath a single, shared umbrella Nisha shoved at them without comment. They walked in the way new conspirators do, talking about everything sideways. Whether as a decoy for fear, guitars as code for history, cafes as safe harbors. He learned she lived 4 blocks over in a converted textile warehouse where artists rented cubicles that leaked in the rains. She learned he taught beginner guitar lessons weekday mornings to pay for strings and lentils. They traded embarrassing performance stories, his first open mic where his E-string snapped mid-intro, her first gallery hang where she hung half the canvases upside down because nerves made words invert. By her building's door, rain dripping off the umbrella spokes, he said, "I'd like to hear the stories behind those sketches sometime. I'd like to hear the songs you don't finish." Deal. They stood in the kind of pause that can tip into kiss or retreat. Claire felt the drag toward him, warm, dangerous, electric, but also the familiar coil of panic that rises when too many variables crowd in. She chose a third path. She stepped back but held his gaze. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Claire." She went inside. He walked home in the rain humming the chorus he hadn't gotten right. Days spilled. Texts sprouted, careful at first, then quick. She sent photos of paint-splattered hands. He sent voice clips of riff ideas. She admitted that crowds squeezed her breath. He admitted that success did the same. They discovered a shared love of pre-digital folk recordings where you can hear chairs creak and dogs bark in the background. They discovered they both hated small talk but would happily dissect the emotional arc of a single sustained note. One Wednesday afternoon, he showed up at the warehouse studio with coffee and a travel amp. She'd taped butcher paper over the concrete wall and sketched looping graphite lines that tracked the waveform of one of his songs. He ran the riff while she layered washes of color over the pencil path, cobalt for bass runs, saffron for harmonics, smoke gray for his laugh when he missed a fret. "You paint sound," he said. "I paint what it does to me." He set the guitar down and watched her lay pigment until dusk pooled in the rafters. Not everything softened at once. Panic did not vanish because a musician smiled. Some Fridays the cafe still flooded with bodies and Claire clung to her back corner. Habitat, though now she waved when he caught her eye. Twice she left mid-set when the noise swelled. Both times Ethan texted after, "Breathing okay?" She replied yes. Rain brain. Once she texted no. Today is shards. He packed up early and walked to her building with chamomile and silence. He learned to measure sets not by crowd volume but by the steadiness of her hands. She learned to sit 3 tables closer. In late July, a local arts collective announced a cross-disciplinary festival, Sound plus Vision plus Story. Submissions open. Pop-up gallery nights. Live performance mashups. Nisha forwarded the link with 20 exclamation points. "You too. Do this." Claire's first instinct, hide. Ethan's first instinct, leap. They compromised by reading the rules together at her studio table while sharing a bowl of salted mango. 224 collaborators, Ethan read. Interactive encouraged, Claire. Added. Submission due August 15. That's 3 weeks. We've built whole worlds in less. They chose resonance distance as their theme. Claire would paint live while Ethan played. Sensors, borrowed from a tech-savvy friend, would translate volume spikes into